What's going on? Welcome into the Matt Bernier Show, live.drf.com, livestream.com, the Daily Racing Forum's Twitter handle at DRF Inside Post, and the Daily Racing Forum's Facebook page if you are watching this live. This show is a recap show for the weekend of December the 9th. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. We've got a couple of graded races, grade ones anyway, to go over from Saturday at Los Alamitos. We have a graded stakes race on closing day up at Woodbine from Sunday, and then a couple of other minor stakes races. We'll also quickly go over the entirety of this sort of sequence of races from Gulfstream Park, with the Clasico do Caribe being the main event, and then we'll also get you queued up with some of the best performances of this past weekend. First things first, though, I was unable to make it in on Friday, so I was unable to talk about the horrific situation at San Luis Rey Downs, where unfortunately the vast majority of the barns have burned down, and there have been a number of horse casualties and even human casualties as well, a number of horse fatalities. A terrible situation all around. There's really nothing else to say as far as what the unfortunate situation is. Just it's amazing to see how quickly something like that can develop. And in these sort of terrible times, these trying times, it's just as important to see how everyone bounces back. And the horse community, particularly on Twitter, the amount of just outreach that everyone from coast to coast, from country to country, continent to continent, the amount of people that have reached out and have helped the folks down in Southern California, obviously at San Luis Rey, has been phenomenal. And all of the helpers at Del Mar for not only opening up the racetrack, but the volunteers and all of the equipment and all of the goods that needed to be donated, and all the people that helped get the horses out of harm's way and into safety. Tip of the cap, kudos to everyone there, and hopefully things continue on in a positive manner, and we try to regroup and build on from a terrible situation that happened down at San Luis Rey. As best as we can, we'll transition into some racing, because we had some good racing this past weekend, and most notably the 2-year-olds. They took center stage, and we're going to start off with the Grade 1 Cash Call Futurity at Los Alamitos. Let's take a look at the field. There was a small field, a select field of only 5 that were going to go forward. Bob Baffert, well represented with 40% of the field. The 2 horses to beat, the 3 Solomini, the 5 McKinsey, and my goodness, you want to talk about a controversial sort of finish. We're going to take a look. This is the stretch run of the Los Alamitos Futurity.
Front, McKinsey has to step on the gas to keep going with him. Instilled Regard, McKinsey. Now these two step into it with Solomini. Still a major player on the outside. 3 of them coming down the lane. McKinsey just the leader. Instilled Regard between runners. Solomini there on the outside. A 3-way driving finish in the Futurity. McKinsey, Solomini, Instilled Regard, Solomini. Solomini wins the Los Alamitos.
Hell of a horse race. Now, what you just saw there and these results, they don't match up, and that's because Solomini was disqualified from first and placed third because it cost a placing possibly of the number 1 Instilled Regard. He has moved up to second, which means that the number 5 McKinsey, although he finished second on the racetrack, is awarded the victory. He pays $3 to win. Instilled Regard is moved up to second. He pays $6.80 to place. Solomini, there was no show wagering, so there was no mutual there. The $1 exacta 5-1 comes back $9.10. The $1 trifecta 5-1-3 comes back $15.20. McKinsey is a 2-year-old colt. He is owned by Carl Watson, Mike Pegram, and Paul Whiteman, trained by Bob Baffert, bred by Summer Wind Farm. He is a Kentucky bred, ridden by Mike Smith in the pedigree Street Sense out of a Petionville mare, runaway model. 2 for 2 thus far, $210,000 in career earnings from McKinsey. He earns a 91 Beyer speed figure in this race, which is not the fastest number coming out of this from a Beyer speed figure standpoint. That honor belongs to Solomini, who earned a 92 from a Timeform US standpoint. They were all strong figures. Solomini earns a 121, McKinsey a 120, Instilled Regard a 121. I have to be honest with you, whether you agree or disagree with the disqualification situation, then I'll touch on that momentarily. I think this was a very strong race. I'm sure there are people out there that are a little bit suspect about overall how this whole thing looks, because the 3 of them, you had horses swapping leads and lugging in on each other and lugging out and whatever it may have been. I think this is a very strong race, and I think it could be very, very productive and positive going forward, leading into the soon-to-be 3-year-olds. Let's start off with the disqualification situation. In my opinion, if you were going to disqualify one horse, you needed to disqualify both of them, meaning Solomini and McKinsey, because McKinsey did lean out into Instilled Regard, and I feel like part of that process led them into Solomini, and Solomini did come over. There's no denying that. There was significant contact in that situation. Instilled Regard was no question the loser of the contact and the sort of issue that we had. I just feel like if you're going to take one of them down, you need to take both of them down. If you're not going to take both of them down, leave the result as is. Because as Mike Watchmaker alluded to in his column for the weekend, I suppose there's a scenario where you could have run that race 10 more times, and that was going to be the result. Solomini may have been just the best horse on that day. Now, for me, when I look at it, again, from a speed figure standpoint, Solomini a 92, McKenzie a 91, Instilled Regard a 91. The Timeform US ratings, 121 for Solomini, 120 for McKenzie, 121 for Instilled Regard. I think the three of them all ran enormous races, and from strictly a handicapping standpoint, the fractions, nothing was out of the ordinary. It was a very, very honest pace. Wasn't fast, wasn't slow. I think it was a situation where the last move was the winning move, because Solomini early on, he was close to the pace, but Flavien Prat did a very, very smart thing, took him back just in behind everyone, and then you saw Instilled Regard make that big brush up the backside on the far turn, rounding. And then you saw Solomini come outside with his run. I feel like it was the last run that was the winning move. I also think if I'm the one to make the call, I love everything about Instilled Regard. We talked about it a little bit in the stakes preview for the Race of the Day video. I think Instilled Regard could turn into a monster 3-year-old. I have no reason to think that Solomini or McKenzie won't continue to train on. I thought they all did very, very well. Baffert said it himself. Solomini was the better horse on this day. Mike Smith regarding McKenzie said he's going to move forward. He got tired at the end, and he never saw the horse on the outside coming. Baffert says, you know what, McKenzie probably doesn't want to be that close to the pace. They learned a little bit there. Keep in mind, this is only a second lifetime start, first time, 2 turns, first time against winners. But the good news is, and the thing that you got to keep in mind about Bob Baffert, he has a ton of 3-year-olds, and we can take a look at the chart right now for this race for the Cash Call Futurity. Baffert is always rich with 3-year-olds, and he's not afraid to ship to Oaklawn. It sounds like right now these are the 2 leading lights for him with the soon-to-be 3-year-olds. One of them I'm sure will stay in Southern California. The other will go to Hot Springs, Arkansas. If you're thinking about Santa Anita, maybe you already want to circle a date on the calendar, February 3rd. I believe that is Super Bowl weekend. It may not be Super Bowl Sunday. I think it is the Saturday. But the Bob Lewis at 8.5 furlongs for 3-year-olds. Who knows? There is nothing confirmed that hasn't even been thrown out there, but maybe that's just a date that you want to keep circled. The Los Alamitos Cash Call Futurity. It was a phenomenal horse race, controversial disqualification, but I think you're going to hear a lot from these 3 horses going forward as they turn 3. Co-headliner Saturday at Los Alamitos is the Grade 1 Starlet for 2-year-old fillies, the counterpart to the Futurity. Let's take a look at that field. Major scratch with the number 4 War Heroine being withdrawn, clearly because of the issues at San Luis Rey with the fire. She's been taken out. All of a sudden, now you're left with an overwhelming favorite in this spot for Bob Baffert named Dream Tree. She was 2 for 2 leading into this race. It's going to be her first time going 2 turns. And guess what? She passed with flying colors the stretch run of the Starlet.
At the top of the stretch, and yesterday's news now shaken up on the front end as Dream Tree is up to challenge on the outside, and Dream Tree has gone right on by yesterday's news, and she did it with ease. Dream Tree opening up for Drayden Van Dyke in the Starlet. She's 2.5 lengths in front. Yesterday's news back to second, long way back to Piedi Bianchi. Dream Tree, a star in the making. She wins the Starlet by 3.5.
Dream Tree just much the best, winning the Starlet. The only mutual that's paid out is a win in a 4-horse field with a 2 to 5 shot. She pays $2.80 on top. As far as the exact is concerned, 3.5 exacta for $1 comes back $8.40, and the $1 trifecta 3.52 comes back $12.20. Dream Tree is a 2-year-old filly by Uncle Mo out of an Afleet Alex mare named Afleet Maggie. She's 3 for 3 lifetime now. She's earned $270,000 for her connections. You see the familiar name of Bob Baffert in there. Los Alamitos, Grade 1s equal Bob Baffert, Drayden Van Dyke with the ride. This is an instance where we talk about pace making the race. You could not have drawn up a better situation for Dream Tree. She's sitting off of yesterday's news, who may or may not be a turf horse. We don't know just yet. She continues to improve, and we'll touch on her momentarily. But if the best horse works out the best trip and is being handled the way that she was by Drayden Van Dyke, you had to think the moment he said go, she was going to explode. And she did just that. She never got out of first gear, it didn't look. Now, the interesting thing about this race, when you really go through and dissect it, the fractions, pace makes the race. Timeform US had all of the fractions color-coded as blue as slow, which is totally understandable. You've got splits of 24-3, 49-1, 13-1, the mile markup in 37-2. She sprinted home. She got her final 5/16 and 30-2. You compare that to the boys, they came home. Solamini most notably came home in 31-3. The difference there is they went a heck of a lot faster in the boys division than they did in the girls, and the final time reflects that. The boys came home, ultimately got the mile on 16th distance in 1:42-2. The girls got the mile on 16th in 1:43-4. That leads you to the slower time figures anyway. From a buyer standpoint, Dream Tree, as impressive as she looked, and I'm sure she could have run faster, but you never know. She earns an 80 buyer, a 103 time form US rating. Compared that to the boys, 92 with the fastest number in that race with Solamini and a 121 time form US rating. So visually, Dream Tree checked all the boxes. The question remains, against better company, against faster horses with a faster pace, how is she going to react to that? Bob Baffert was very, very pleased with this. Drayden Van Dyke even said it. He goes, I never had to get the stick out, hand ride the whole way. She just exploded through the stretch. Simon Callahan was pleased with yesterday's news. He said, you know, she got all her things her own way on the front end. She ran a courageous race. It's hard to be upset with this. You can't be disappointed. She's getting better and better each and every time. I still wonder what yesterday's news best game is going to be. Is she going to be a forwardly placed turf horse, or is she going to be a dirt horse eventually? I wonder if, again, you know, we talked about a little bit with the 3-year-old boys, soon to be 3-year-old boys. Maybe you circle a race like on February the 4th at Santa Anita, the 1 mile Las Virgenes, if you're thinking about a return effort or a return spot for a horse like Dream Tree, or even yesterday's news, or Pita Bianchi, who was a little bit disappointing in here, but I don't want to hold it completely against her because, again, we touched on it. There wasn't a lot of speed signed on early. She was coming from well off the pace. So all things considered, visually, very impressive effort from Dream Tree. She's going to need to step it up at some point from a buyer standpoint, but she gets the job done, looks beautiful doing so, earns an 80 buyer speed figure, winning the Starlet. Closing day up at Woodbine north of the border in Toronto was on Sunday. Their main event on closing day was the Valedictory Stakes. It was a grade 3 event. Let's take a look at that field, and boy, they were going forever and a day. About 1.75 miles. It was a situation where Melmich was the horse to beat. He was eventually bet down to even money come post time, but there were questions leading into this race. Maybe he wasn't in as good form as he had been in the past. Maybe he was slightly tailing off, and there was an up-and-coming horse in Leave 'Em in Malibu who figured to be a very, very formidable foe, and sure enough, that is exactly how it played out. Here's the stretch run of the Valedictory.
Shot away. Leave 'Em in Malibu 2 in front. Melmich is all out in second. Ethical Funds on the inside. And Leave 'Em in Malibu's holding them safely in the Valedictory. Melmich trying desperately, but Leave 'Em in Malibu has come of age and wins the Valedictory by 2 lengths to Melmich. Third Ethical Funds, fourth Bangkok, and fifth Pumpkin Rumble.
Leave 'Em in Malibu wins the 63rd running of the Grade 3 Valedictory, pays $9.40 on top. Melmich, your even money favorite, runs second, pays $2.60 to place. And the number 4, Ethical Funds, $8.40 to show. $2 exacta, $2.11 comes back $24.30. $2 try, $2.11.4 comes back $3.43.90. The $1 superfecta, $1,211.70. Leave 'Em in Malibu is a 4-year-old who looks like Hercules out on the racetrack, just an enormous hulking horse. He's 4 of 12 lifetime. He's over $326,000 in career earnings. He's owned by Gary Barber and Conrad Farms, trained by Mark Cassie, ridden by Patrick Husbands, and you can take a look at that pedigree. Malibu Moon out of a Danzig mare. I can't stress enough, he looks like he's the size of just an absolute tower. He's an enormous horse. He's big barrel-chested, and it just felt like Leave 'Em in Malibu was the kind of horse that it took a long time for the light bulb to go on, but now that it finally has, it looks like he's blossomed. He has matured in a big, big way. This was an impressive effort. Now, 1.75 miles is the anomaly. He's going to do this once a year, basically, if they choose to go on to a race like this again next year. But there's no reason to think that maybe you're at a point now where Melmich is slowly tailing off. And maybe you're at a point where Are You Kidding Me is not the horse that he once was. Gigantic Breeze, I would assume, will be back next year to run up at Woodbine. But now, all of a sudden, do you look at it and say, this is going to be the leading light for the older horses up north of the border over that Tapeta surface, because he gets over it very well, and it looks like mentally he's finally caught up to his physical maturation. It looks like he can run all day. We know he can run winning shorter at 1 1/8, 1 1/16. He just really fits the part. Patrick Husband said it. He studied the racing form the entire night before on Saturday night, and he said this is a big galloping sort. He told the assistant trainer that he was just going to get out there. We're going to go, break, get running early on, and we're just going to try to gallop him into the ground. And that's exactly what he did. This horse opened up, as you can see by the chart. He opened up and ultimately won by 2.5 lengths. He's just playing with him out there, is what Patrick's husband said after the race. Leave him in Malibu. Again, he looks like the picture. That's what you would think of when you see a racehorse. He's certainly happy out there. Tremendous job by Mark Casse. Took a little while. You had to go on and persevere and tweak some things here and there with him. But ultimately, leave him in Malibu. He's matured nicely as a 4-year-old, soon to be 5-year-old. He gets the job done in the 1 3/4 Valedictory. Going back to Saturday at the Big A, the snowy Big A, they had a pretty good event go on, and unfortunately some scratches made it a shorter field than it looked like going into it, but it was still a good race. This is the field for the Garland of Roses Stakes. You scratched Ms. Locust Point, you scratched Friend of Liberty. Ms. Locust Point went on to win a stakes race down at Laurel on Saturday afternoon, but K-Zone eventually went off favored in this spot at odds of 7-5. She had been slowly piecing it together. She'd run good races all year, but she'd yet to get over the hump. John Embriol in the snow calls the stretch run of the Garland of Roses.
In a late charge here. It's Pico Uno. K-Zone on the outside. Pico Uno. K-Zone to win it. K-Zone wins the stakes.
K-Zone gets up in time, wins the Garland of Roses, pays $4.90 on the win end. Pico Uno runs second, $3.10. Absolutely, $2.20 to show. The $1 exacta, $8.70. The 50-cent try, $5.70. And the 10-cent superfecta, $3. K-Zone is a 5-year-old mare at this point in her career. She's won 6 of 17 lifetime starts. You see she's hit the board 14 of 17 times, just under $700,000 in career earnings. She is owned by Mark Keller. She's trained by Robert Robato, and she is a New York bred by the Apache Farm LLC, ridden by Joe Rocco Jr., who's going to be wintering here up at Aqueduct. And you look at the pedigree, this horse is by Tis Wonderful out of an Olympio mare named Kalukan Dancer. Unfortunate news coming out of the Garland of Roses. At about the 8th pole, there was a catastrophic injury, and unfortunately, Fusiichi Red needed to be euthanized, a fractured right hind pastern. So condolences out to the connections there. A sad situation. You saw it was a snowy day at Aqueduct. The fractions of this race were very, very slow. They didn't go that fast. 23 and 147, 159 for 5/8 of a mile. K-Zone, again, it took her a little while to finally get over the hump here. It also was a little bit interesting to see that she was coming from last, because you figured with the scratches in here, most notably Ms. Locust Point, she figured to be forwardly placed. The thing that kind of threw a monkey wrench into all of this was absolutely being as forwardly placed, actually outright on the lead as she was. Charlie Baker in the post-race comments said things did not go as planned. Didn't plan on being on the lead. They wanted her to come from off of it as she had been in her prior starts. It is worth noting, as Dave Grenning alluded to in his recap for this race, you can find that still on DRF.com. The top 3, they're all New York breds, and they could easily run again against one another in the $100,000 Laver Dodd Stakes that will be taking place on January the 6th. At Aqueduct, K-Zone earns a 92 Beyer speed figure and a 111 Timeform US rating, winning the Garland of Roses. Go from snow to slop on Saturday down at Gulfstream Park. 2-year-olds in the Smooth Air Stakes going 1 mile. Let's take a look at that field. This was an instance where you didn't really have a prohibitive favor. You had a couple of horses that took the lion's share of the money, both of them Todd Pletcher trainees, the number 1 Colton, Mississippi, and also the number 9 Bal Harbor. And they both went off 2-1, and it was an instance where Colton, Mississippi had a little bit of a following as far as buzz is concerned. Bal Harbor, all he had done was gone out and actually run well on the racetrack, and guess what? He's ultimately the one that prevails. Here's the stretch run of the Smooth Air.
This is Where She Told Me to Go. Now let loose by Tyler Gaffleone, and Where She Told Me to Go strides to the lead with 1 to fight off as Bal Harbor takes dead aim at the leader from second with less than 1/8 of a mile to go. Where She Told Me to Go digging in. Bal Harbor coming on. Where She Told Me to Go and Bal Harbor. Bal Harbor's got him. Bal Harbor. Bal Harbor nailed.
Bal Harbor gets up in time, wins the Smooth Air Stakes for 2-year-olds down at Gulfstream, pays $6.60 on the win end. Where She Told Me to Go, big effort. Thought it was a very, very promising one going forward. $11 to place. The 6 stronger, $4 to show. $2 exacta, $55.40. $1 trifecta, $166.30, and the 10-cent superfecta, $220.60. Bal Harbor, 2-year-old colt. He's trained by Todd Pletcher. He's owned by Red Oak Stable. He's bred by Red Oak Stable. He is 3 of 6 lifetime now, $136,000 in career earnings. You look at the pedigree, First Samurai, out of a Casino City mare casino transaction. It would appear as though distance is not going to be an issue. This is a horse that Dam was a stakes winner herself. 2 turns is not an issue for this horse. He won the Sapling at Monmouth Park in September, so he just improved, that additional distance in the two-turn configuration as opposed to the one-turn, whatever it may be. All of that fits. This horse checks a lot of boxes. Still a little bit on the light speed figure side here. An 81 Beyer, a 100 Timeform US rating. For what it's worth, where she told me to go, actually earned a faster Timeform US rating with a 101. But Pletcher said after the race he had a busy 2-year-old campaign. They gave him a little bit of a breather, a little freshening, brought him into this spot here. They had this targeted circled. It was a logical place to bring him back, and they're going to likely point to a race like the Mucho Macho Man. That'll be another one-turn mile, and that'll be held on January 6th at Gulfstream Park. Bal Harbour, maybe he's not a superstar, but he's an honest horse. He shows up, he runs. I think there are a lot of things to like. He's an easy horse to root for. He may not be sexy, and he may not be the most impressive 2-year-old that you're going to see. He may not be a McKinsey or a Solimini or an Instilled Regard, but why can't he be an effective 2-year-old going forward? I think Bal Harbour is a nice horse, and it was a solid professional effort here winning the Smooth Air Stakes. Smooth Air Stakes and a number of other ungraded stakes were run on the undercard at Gulfstream Park on Saturday, but the main event and the highlight event were all the Latin American horses coming up for the first time having the Clasico del Caribe run outside of Latin America. They ran it at Gulfstream Park. Here's a montage of all the Clasico sort of races.
Sets Gladiadora down for the drive, and she tries to get to the leader, and that leader is How Are You? Short stretch to work with. How Are You? 4 in front. Gladiadora gaining, but time running out. In fact, time has run out. It's How Are You? Give one to Mexico as How Are You? And a Rat Ortiz Jr. stride clear to a 5-length win. Second, Gladiadora. Third was Sigona. Then a Splendorosa. And the Copa after 3 quarters in 1:12 and 4. The mile in 1:38 and 3. Puerto Rico has taken over. Arquitecto moves 2 on top. Back to second and El Tigre Mono. Back to third is Igor, then Don Carlos R. It's Arquitecto with the lead. El Tigre Mono's got a shot. Here's El Tigre Mono refusing to yield. El Tigre Mono! Panamanians rejoice. El Tigre as they turn in. Master Supreme straightens for the judge, a length and a half on top. It's Master Supreme. Johnny V trying to get another one, and he still has the lead. Master Supreme now by 3. Forze Mao is late on the scene. He's rallied into second, but time has run out. The winner is Master Supreme on the wire by 2. Forze Mao was second. Third was Justiciero. Fourth was Atenea. Ahead of Master is back to second. Michigas made that big run, but he's not sustained it yet. He is coming up the inside lane with 3 lengths down and 1/8 of a mile to go. Coltimus Prime will have to fend off Michigas and El Curdo. Coltimus Prime 2.5. El Curdo, Michigas, Jade Master, but to the wire, Renee Douglas, Coltimus Prime, and Rat Ortiz Jr. won it by 2.5. Second, El Curdo. Third, Michigas. Third, fourth, has to quicken now. Third, and they're at the top of the stretch in the Caribbean Classic. And Mexico's Hala Hala is opening up. Hala Hala by 6. Hala Hala by 7. Mexico with a powerhouse performance in this year's Caribbean Classic. Here's Hala Hala. Rat Ortiz Jr. for his third of the day. Hala Hala in a romp. Second is Fray Angelico. Third is Joy Me Immenso, the Dominican.
An impressive effort from Hala Hala winning the Clasico del Caribe at Gulfstream Park over a sloppy surface down there Saturday afternoon. And speaking of Saturday afternoon and the weekend, this is an easy way for us to transition into the weekend's best, as we always do here on this recap edition of the Matt Bernier Show. We go over the best performances, regardless of the age, regardless of the surface, whatever it may be. And we give it to you in a little bit of a slate. And for those of you that are just listening to this, I'll verbalize it for you. So here we go. 2-year-old males. The best performance of the weekend actually belonged to Solimini from a speed figure standpoint. He was disqualified from first and placed third. We already touched on that. He earned a 92 Beyer. 2-year-old females on the dirt. Dream Tree with an 80 Beyer speed figure. 3-year-old males on the dirt. Backyard Haven, a 97 Beyer speed figure. That was in a maiden special weight race at Aqueduct. You may want to take a look at Backyard Haven as a horse going forward, soon to be 4-year-old. The 3-year-old females. Divine Miss Gray, a 97 Beyer speed figure. That was also accomplished at Aqueduct this past weekend. Older males, TR Crew, a 98 Beyer speed figure. That also came at Aqueduct. And K-Zone, we saw what she did, winning the Garland of Roses with a 92 Beyer speed figure. As far as the turf horses are concerned, the 2-year-old males, Speed Franco, 72 Beyer. 2-year-old females, Malibu Saint, 69 Beyer. 3-year-old males, Excavation from Golden Gate Fields, 84 Beyer speed figure. 3-year-old females, Kathy Song wins the Miss America with an 87 Beyer speed figure. Older males, Converge with an 87 Beyer speed figure. And the older females, Invenium Vium, 81 Beyer speed figure. Those were your weekend's best performances from a Beyer speed figure standpoint. We do that every Tuesday, if you're watching it live anyway, here on the Matt Bernier Show. This also gives us the opportunity to take a look and see what's to come this week as far as DRFTV is concerned. Let's throw up the weekly slate and show you what to expect. You've got a number of graded stakes races still to come, coming up this weekend, most notably at Gulfstream Park, where you can see you've got the My Charmer, you've got the Rampart, you've got the Sugar Swirl, the Tropical Turf, you've got a stakes race up at Aqueduct, might as well be Woodbine now because it's cold. You get into the Friday situation where you've got the DRF Players Podcast with Peter Thomas, Fornatale, and Jonathan Kinchin, leads in to the Matt Bernier Show, which then leads into Out of the Gate. Then you'll have all your stakes previews and all the other sort of good stuff, including a number of other good things. The Harlan's Holiday is going to be also a stakes preview. Those will all be up on video.drf.com, as well as the Daily Racing Forms YouTube channel. For those of you that watch this program live on Tuesday at noon Eastern, live.drf.com, livestream.com, Daily Racing Forms Twitter handle at DRF Inside Post, as well as the Daily Racing Form Facebook page. Thank you for doing so. If you check this out podcast version, which most of you do, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. Best of luck for the remainder of your week. We'll talk again on Friday. We'll go over some races coming up this coming weekend here all over the place, all over the country. Best of luck. We'll talk to you on Friday, the Matt Bernier Show.